What's going on, guys? This is Daniel, one half of the Kwak brothers, and in this video we're going to answer the question, should you buy cheap rental properties? Let's go ahead and cue that intro and we'll get right into it. Alright guys, welcome back. This video we're answering the question, should you buy cheap rental properties? Well, there's a lot of things that we could define as what is cheap rental properties, and that just seems to be one of the popular things that's going on right now, to where people are like, well, I just want the cash flow. It's all about the cash flow, all about the cash flow, all about the cash flow. And don't get me wrong, one of the biggest reasons as to why we do get into real estate is the cash flow. But how sustainable is that cash flow? Is that cash flow really there? That's what we're going to talk about in this video, because, well, a lot of people that say you should always buy cheap rental properties, well, there's a lot of reasons that I've seen and observed that would make you think otherwise. So let's go ahead and define what is a cheap rental property. So there are different classifications of properties, and what I mean by classification is I mean quality. So let's go ahead and divert that first, and we'll go ahead and answer the question, should you do that? So we go from A, B, C, and D. And obviously, as you guys could think of, Class A is typically your nice properties, right? So if we're taking like a 5-unit building or a 6-unit building, Class A is where you have like the nicest amenities, right? Maybe, there's a pool, maybe there's all the rehab has been done. I mean, everything's new, like granite countertops and the new doors, new windows, right? Like everything is just fresh. Landscaping is off the charts. Great view, right, of a city or anything like that. That's Class A. You may have like indoor parking available as well. Class B is a step below that, So maybe, everything that you have is like maybe 5 years old, 4 years old. Maybe the parking lot is outside, it's not inside, but it's outside, but it's still really, really nice, and maybe it's still gated, but it's gonna be a step below Class A. Now, Class C is a little different. Class C is something where it might be a little dirty, still looks nice, right? There's still nice carpet, nice flooring, but it may not be in the best location. Maybe it's outdoor parking, and maybe there's some cracks in the parking lot and whatnot. And Class D is kind of just like that worst of the worst. It's kind of the ghetto area, the ghetto neighborhood where you have a lot of things that's going missing, and maybe there's old windows, there's a hole in the ceiling, and these are the kind of units where you may walk around and just kind of be like, wow, like how could anybody live like this? So now let's talk about the pros and cons, because, well, there's pros and cons, there's good things and there's bad things according to every single classification. Now, I want to encourage you that as a real estate investor and entrepreneur, when we're addressing the question of should you buy cheap rental properties, keep this in mind. Everybody has a different taste for something different. If you're an investor and you want something more passive and you want something that's going to yield a return, you want something that you don't have to put in as much work. Well, a Class B or a Class A option may be more for you. But if you're an investor where you don't mind getting into the nitty gritty and you don't mind, addressing some issues every single week or dealing with some harsh tenants, well, Class C and D might be for you. So let's go ahead and just go down the list of the pros and cons. So Class A is, you have higher quality tenants, meaning that these tenants, although they rent, they probably may be earning, $80,000 or more. They have great job security. They have multiple cars. They're never late on their rent payment, and they're going to be responsible. They're not going to give you a tough time or whatnot, and that they're going to be able to pay rent, right? You're going to get the money. The income is very stable. It also means that the Class A building is in a prime location, meaning that if you bought it at a very high price, you may more than likely be able to sell it around the same ballpark because of how awesome the area is. Now, if you're buying a Class A building and you're buying it at a low price, good for you. That's awesome. You should be able to do that every single time if you are able to. So, good location. You got tenants that pay rent, high quality tenants, so you're not going to have too many repair issues or complaints or anything like that. And that they're going to do everything by the book. Now, the cons is that these units and buildings are obviously going to be worth more, right? It's gonna be worth more. You're gonna have to pay, prime real estate prices for something that is prime real estate. Because the income is more stabilized, it's less hassle. Well, security, that security also comes at a cost. So be sure to keep that in mind as well. Now, here's a con that not a lot of people talk about in Class A apartment buildings, and it's the fact that if a tenant puts in like a repair order or they want something fixed, well, it's no excuse that you don't get out there the next day or within that 3-day span. A lot of times the Class A and also the Class B tenants, if they put in a work order, they contact the landlord or the management company in this scenario about something that needs to be addressed, well, they want to fix now. They want to fix right then and there. They want somebody to come that day and fix it. They want it done ASAP. So the customer service for you has to be at a higher level. Therefore, it's less room for error because you have such a high quality in terms of the tenants. Now, let's move on to Class B. So Class B, some really good pros in Class B is, well, you're not going to have to have that high of a customer quality as much as a Class A. Like, you're going to have less pressure and less demand. But for the most part, a really good pro is that you still have tenants that pay rent. You still have tenants that make good money, decent money. And a lot of times, the Class B, you may have millennials, the 25 to 34 age group who have decent jobs, who are consistently getting income. So you still have that security and stabilization of getting the rent. Now, the downside is obviously it may not be as prime real estate as the Class A. It may not be that downtown area, or it may not be by that river walk, or it may not be by all the train stations or the transportation areas. But rest assured, you still have a very good piece of real estate with Class B. Matter of fact, my favorite assets to go after is Class B because it allows me to not have to worry about the building as much, and allows me to focus on acquisition of other deals. Now, you still have to pay prime price on it. Right now, the going cap rate for a Class B apartment complex is 6.5%, especially where I live in the state of Illinois, in the Chicagoland area. So those are the pros and cons. Now, let's go down to Class C complexes. Now, here's the pros. The pros is that you are most likely not going to have to pay as much for the building. You're probably going to be able to get the building at an 8% cap rate, somewhere around that ballpark. So you don't have to pay as much for the building as you would a Class B or a Class A. And rest assured, a lot of your tenants may be blue-collar workers, so they'll still might be able to pay rent consistently. You may have a couple people in the building, right? If it's like a 20-unit building, you may have 1 or 2 tenants that, are a little inconsistent with paying rent. You may have 3 or 4 depending on where you are investing. And a lot of times the Class C buildings are going to be surrounded by other multifamily buildings as well, meaning that you have a lot of individuals on that one street that rent apartment buildings, that rent apartment complexes and whatnot. So, in terms of parking and also in terms of population density and congestion, that may cause potential problems as well. Now, the cons is now you're kind of getting into the lower tenant quality, where you may have to do some repairs. You may have tenants that cause problems. You may have police officers that get called in once in a while. And the higher likelihood of going through the eviction process is more likely. And meaning that turnovers can happen, which turnovers, a lot of times, guys, when you do a turnover, you're talking about new carpet, new paint. You're talking about the leasing process, and on average, what I've seen, how much in terms of it costs to do a turnover, in terms of moving a tenant out and moving a tenant in, well, I've seen on average between $5,000 to $10,000. So that could be a problem in and of itself. Now let's go on to the Class D, which is the quote-unquote cheap rental properties when we're talking about the question of should you buy cheap rental properties. These are the ones that are the cheap rental properties. These are the Class D buildings, whether it be an apartment complex or a single family house. Yes, on paper, you're going to be able to buy it at a very low cost, and you're going to find the rents, right, it might be fairly nice, right? You might be talking about, $650 a month in rent. You might be talking about $700. I've seen Class D single family houses go for as much as $1,200, $1,400 in rent. Now, that's what it says on paper. Now, guys, I have owned Class D apartment complexes and Class D single family rentals before. I've owned a single family house, a 3-unit, I've owned an 8-unit, right? I've owned multiple pieces of real estate that are classified as Class D. And let me tell you, it's not as good as other people may say. Sure, on paper, it might be great, but you have to put in a lot of time. Like, you really have to be on top of things to be able to enjoy that cash flow in the Class D aspect. And not only that, but also a lot of the headaches that you may have to deal with in doing so, which a lot of times, a lot of you guys might say, well, I don't mind that, Daniel. I don't mind putting in a lot of time to do that. Well, in a scenario like me, an individual that always is looking for another deal, that wants to kind of go out and travel and do a lot of things, that's not the case for me. I want properties where it's very easy to manage, or property manager could be on top of it. I don't want properties that a door is going to break every single week, windows get shattered, right? And a lot of these expenses can pile up, guys. It can pile up and cost you a lot of money. Think about what we talked about, even with just the turnover, the eviction process. I mean, I've seen eviction processes get as expensive as $5,000, and obviously the turnovers on the low end could be $3,000 to $5,000. So you're talking about $8,000, guys, for one eviction and one turnover. If you have that in 1 year, you're talking about a lot of rent being eliminated and you not making as much money as you thought. So hopefully I put in some statements and questions that have made you think and have made you self-sustainable mentally in terms of should you buy cheap rental properties. I say do your research and align it with what your financial goals and what you're looking for, your overall goals are, right? If your financial goals is to be retired and put your money to work, then Class D is probably not for you. If you're somebody that's a little younger and you don't mind putting in the work and you want to deal with the headaches and things like that, then yes, you should buy the cheap rental properties because it's more aligned with what you want to do. So hopefully this video was helpful, guys. Again, feel free to subscribe. Click on that notification bell so you can get free content. I hope I did a decent job and at least started a conversation and answering the question, should you buy cheap rental properties? I'll see you guys in the next video.